Good morning, everyone, my fellow content marketers. When we look at business today, content marketers have one of the hardest jobs there is to do in business because this is something that is in perpetual motion. And because of that, we are constantly under pressure. We are under pressure with our resources, with our deadlines, with our budgets, with everything that keeps moving. And if we look at what a modern marketer looks like as we start to get into how we architect these teams, we are creating a bit of a problem for ourselves. So I don't work in HR, but I review a lot of resumes because my clients have me help them look at team dynamics and structure. And these are titles, honest to goodness titles, that people are putting on their resumes. So here we have the marketing Jedi. And I see this one and I always wonder, what does this person look like when they show up for the job interview? Like, are they wearing one of those long brown robes and they have the lightsaber and they're going to talk about how they'll make sure to keep marketing's ground from IT? You know, you don't get a sense of what this person is all about. And then we look at the new media guru, who does sound a lot more zen and less confrontational than the marketing Jedi. And then this person, I'm never quite sure if they worked for marketing very long because the director of fun, there's a lot of days I've spent in marketing that was anything but fun. Then we look at how marketing starts to evolve into a monarchy, and we have the digital overlord. And I think when we look at what website people are like to work with, this does feel like they are the overlord of their territory, and nobody shall pass without permission. But I think my favorite one is the part-time czar. And I wonder, are they actually applying for a job in marketing, or are they going back to those early 1900s Eastern European ruler kind of roles? But we do this, and we give ourselves these goofy names, all in the vein of looking at how we can become more innovative, and all we do is create more confusion. And we do this, we think that we can create more innovative projects and more innovative work by giving ourselves different labels. But the part that we're missing is that we're not looking at the people behind the projects that we're producing. And this is what's causing us so much friction and so much complexity in the work that we do. So how we start to solve this is that we need to rethink how we architect teams altogether. So as I look at how we start to talk about architecting teams, I want to make an important distinction. Now, there is a definite difference between a role and a function. So when I talk about what a role is, this is behavior that somebody exhibits in a particular situation. It's what you do. So right now, my role is as a speaker. Your role is as an audience member. You're going to learn. That's what you're here for at the conference. So that's a behavior that you have while you're here at Content Marketing World this week. But a function, on the other hand, is a behavior that's natural to you. This is who you are as a person. Now, these are important distinctions because when we look at how is it that we go through the process of hiring people to come onto our teams, this is what happens. We have an empty role, and so we pick up the phone and we call HR and we say, can you send me the job description for the digital overlord that we used last year, and I'd like to review it. And so HR says, you bet, I'll send it right over, it'll be in your inbox. Okay, then we open it from our inbox, and here is this job description that we look at. And we're thinking, no, I just wanted a job description for one person, not an entire team. And you look through it, and we throw everything that we can think of into job descriptions because we want to make sure that in 6 months from now, somebody isn't going to quit to go someplace else because they say, you're asking me to do all sorts of things that weren't in the job description when I got hired. So this is how we cover our bases. And when we get into the details of what these job descriptions look like, what we are doing are describing roles over and over and over again. So we look at this job description for a content manager and the role that they focus on, developing marketing strategies, making recommendations, supporting content acquisition. We look at this behavior that they need to do. We don't look at what kind of person we need to have do this work. Here's another one for a content manager, and it's very specific. They call it out, the role. What they're looking at is we need somebody to do this kind of work, to do the high-level messaging, to highlight the value of the customer. But what happens is that we start to peg people into boxes. And when we do that, we tell people, this is your role, this is what you will do. And this is the beginning of the building blocks of silos within companies. Because we tell people, this is your territory, this is your label for the work that you will do, and this is how we expect you to perform. You stack all of these boxes of individual job descriptions, and this is how you create silos. Now, let's look at silos just within the marketing organization. Okay, we have the digital team. We know they're the overlords. You don't dare touch the website or a digital product without their approval ahead of time. We look at the content team. And although we would like to think that we are the perfect ones in the rooms, we all have our own quirks. And sometimes people are afraid to work with us a little bit too. But then you move into the demand gen team. And I tell you, the demand gen team, they are like wolves. They will eat your arm off if you cross the line into their silo without permission. And then you look at the product team. And we know the product team, they're the ones who are developing things secretly, launch them, and nobody ever knows what's going on until it's already said and done. And we think, why didn't anybody tell us? This isn't how it's supposed to work. And then the last group is the brand team. And I, honest to goodness, think the brand team has meetings just to coordinate how they say no to everybody else in the organization. I had somebody in branding once say to me, this is where dreams go to die. But this is what happens when we focus so much on the roles, is that we create these silos, and silos within marketing. Then we have to try and work across the aisle with silos in other parts of the organization. But the problem comes is that if we are trying to consistently turn out this amazingly innovative work on a regular and reliable basis, we are never going to be able to scale if we look at teams based on the increments of how we label each role. And that's what's holding us back from creating the greater innovation. Because you can never scale the innovation or the output or the scope of work from one person who is boxed into a role, or a team that is boxed into a role. And when you start to break these barriers, what you start to see is that teams become aligned. And when you have aligned teams, they are absolutely fearless. And if you have ever been part of a team that is aligned, that has that cohesion and flow, those are the days you dream about going to work. You can't wait to get out of bed on a Monday morning and get to the office, because you see what you can all accomplish together. This is why we have to start to rethink how it is that we look at the teams and how we build them. Now, I want to give you an example of somebody who has done an amazing job of creating a very diverse ecosystem of functions on his team, and how he was able to turn out this consistently innovative type of work. So this is Corrado Paolucci. And Corrado is the newsroom editor, and he's head of content strategy for Eni. They're an energy company in Milan, Italy. And he was one of the Content Marketer of the Year finalists this year. And one of the things that Corrado loved is his background is in journalism. His father was a journalist, so he grew up with that storytelling type of mentality. He's worked on the brand side, he's worked on agency side, he's worked on many, many different kind of roles. But what he understood when he came to work at Eni is that they had a very big challenge for the industry. Is that the energy industry, Eni is one of the top oil production companies in the world, and they have a reputation problem for how it is that they treat the environment. And he would look at how his company was perceived because of the industry that he was in. And he said most people look at oil and gas companies and they think of them as the damage that they do to the environment. And he said, to be honest, that is actually what happens. You see these oil spills that kill the foliage, and it kills all the living everything, and you have to wash down animals that have been soaked with oil spills. And he said, you even look at the impact of what can happen in parts of the world from energy production, and how it displaces people, because this was an area where maybe they farmed before, and now all of that ground has been turned into energy production. So some people have to walk hours a day just to get to an area so that they can earn a living. And he said, that is not who I want to represent as a company. And then he came across something called the Edelman Trust Barometer. Oh, I'll back up one. The Edelman Trust Barometer. And what he saw with the Trust Barometer is that he could see this opportunity for people around the world to look at his brand as one that provided trust when it came to energy and how the planet was treated. And he started by looking at one project that his company had done 30 years ago in the Green River Valley in Africa. And he looked at the data and the statistics about what the area was like from a sustainability standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, from a social sciences standpoint, before Eni went in and they started to do production there. And he said it was tough. People could hardly make a living while they were there. The environment wasn't taken care of. If people were able to leave the area for any reason to make another living, they did it. But what he saw after Eni had been there is that the area was ready for agriculture, and they had brought education resources into the area. And he could see now, 30 years later, the tremendous impact in a positive way that had happened because of what Eni had done and the philosophy that they had as a company. Now, he took that one step further, and he worked with a group of people internally, and they launched a website called Eni Day. And they said, for us, what matters the most is to talk about how we create clean energy and how we protect natural resources and things like that. So this is the story that they began to tell, and it created amazing traction for not only their main audience, their target audience, but also looking at people in the world who just cared about how the planet was taken care of. And then he's taken that one step further, and in June they launched Eni TV. So they have their own TV network that they produce in-house that's public for everybody to see, that talks about the future of energy, the future of how we treat our planet. He said this has been a distinguishing factor for how the company is perceived, how employees who work for the company perceive the value of the work. And the interesting thing is the dynamics of how teams work together now that they have this bigger story to live up to. For Corrado, he has been meticulous with how he puts together the teams he works with in order to consistently be able to put out this innovative, regular, and reliable kind of work. When he talks about the teams and the dynamics and how he puts them together, he said what you really have to pay attention to is what are people like as people? What do they want? What do they desire? What makes them excited? What are their dreams about what they want to do? And as a boss, these are the kind of things that you have to tap into if you want to be successful. Now, there are things that Corrado has learned that apply to every one of us in this room. And the first one is you need to start to think bigger about what it is that you can accomplish based on how you architect your teams. Because if you know your function as a person, you have so many different opportunities with roles. Because as a person, you understand your strength, and you understand that they apply in many different situations. That's the first step in architecting a really strong team. The second step is that you have to fuel people's fire. When you are able to stoke people's natural passions and desires and what they want to bring to the world, they become almost unstoppable. And he understood that as he looked at how we bring out these stories in the work that Eni does. And the third thing is that he looked at how he could create whole brain teams. He understood that people have different talents, different dynamics, and different things that they bring together. And when you put these whole brain teams together, you are actually able to produce much more significant work than he ever imagined before. So that's what Corrado looked at, is how can he create an entire ecosystem of a team that is able to consistently put out this innovative work. Now, the first time I came across this idea of looking at teams based on their function rather than their role was a few years ago when I did a project for Western Union. My client was this woman, Donna Rossi, and she was the vice president of marketing and customer experience. And what she looked at is, at the time, Western Union was 155 years old, and they were ready to celebrate that milestone in their history. And she said, interestingly, for as much of an impact that Western Union has had really on the entire world, people don't know the story. They think of them either as the telegram people or as the people who transfer money. And she said there's such a richness that nobody understood. I mean, these are the people who were the brown wardrobed messengers who brought people messages from far distances when communication wasn't very strong. This is the company that when Wilbur and Orville Wright made the first flight, that they brought the news to the world. They were the company that transmitted the information for the Zimmerman telegram during World War. And so what she said is that we have this incredible opportunity to tell this story about how Western Union has connected the world. And I want this to be something that can stand the test of time for the story that we tell. And I said, well, I'd be delighted to help you because it's history, which is my forte, it's branding, which is my forte, and it's storytelling. Like, this is a dream come true. And then she dropped the hammer. She said, the only thing is that we have to work with our legal team. And she said, our lawyers, it's intellectual property, it's branding law, and she went down the line of about 7 different lawyers that had to be on the team. And I said, well, let's give it a try. And we all came together at the beginning of the project, and it was one of the most fascinating things to observe and be a part of. Because what I saw very quickly is that these lawyers understood, here's my role and my title, but really here's my function over here. Because our goal at the end of the day is to tell this monumental story in a way that inspires employees, captivates people who are fans of the brand, and we have to start it, get it written, laid out, through legal, and out the door in 90 days. So it was a huge project. But what worked so well is that we were able to focus on what are the functions of everybody in the room and how do we contribute together to get it done. And that's how we were able to tell the story of Western Union in such a profound way that had an impact on the company and how employees saw it and how outside stakeholders saw it in a way that took a very short amount of time. Now, there's 3 things that I learned from being a part of this team. The first is that we need to compare and contrast and focus on education rather than dissension. So when different types of people come together on teams, whether it's all a marketing team or it's a cross-functional team, the first thing that starts to happen is we say, that's not how we do it. And that creates dissension. And it makes people put up their walls, and they're not willing to learn about how other groups do things and the why behind it. But when you can start with this collaboration and you compare and contrast how things are done in different groups, that's when you start to build consensus. The second thing that I learned is sharing is caring. Now, we hear this from the time that we are little kids, that these are things that we should do. So we need to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly that went on. And if you know anything about Agile, this is a retrospective. Sometimes it's called a post-mortem. What we do is we look at these big projects and we say, like, actually, let's say what happened, what did go well, what didn't go well, and why was this the case? But what we tend to do as marketers is that we run at such a fast cadence that we never stop to see what didn't go well, and then we just continue to repeat the same problems down the road. Now, the third thing that I learned is that we have to emphasize curiosity. And this is a big component of building teams that are really focused on innovation. Because curious people are willing to foster the idea of what's possible, even while other people think it's improbable. If I had told any other branding, marketing, legal team that we could do a project like the Western Union history in 90 days, start to finish and out the door, they would say that's impossible. It's improbable. Who can do that? But we nurtured it, and instead of saying it can't be, we said, what if it could, and what would that look like? So that's how we started to cross that divide between different areas in marketing and also within other parts of the organization.